Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me today for this tutorial. I'm going to show you how to paint realistic lips. This is just one example. There are so many lighting variations, mouth shapes, and skin tones out there, so by all means experiment on your own terms. This is just meant to serve an example of a single approach. There will be a 30-minute version of this tutorial available to members of my website at lenadanya.com, along with half-hour videos and behind the scenes of many other paintings with much more in-depth explanations of my process. Please make sure to watch my Basics of Oil Painting video if you haven't already to help you get started with oil paint. The colors I'm working with are yellow ochre, cadmium lemon, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, burnt umber, but you can also use raw umber, and Payne's gray. And if you don't have Payne's gray, you can also substitute your choice of black, just use it very sparingly. I also added ultramarine blue and sap green to my palette just in case, but I never ended up using them. And the solvent I'm using is Gamsol. This is the only medium I'm going to use to mix with my palette as I'm working, and I'm using it to clean the brushes in a separate jar as well. So here we have my palette, and I'm pouring some Gamsol into a dish. I started out by mixing some burnt umber with Gamsol to create a really diluted, fast-drying layer for the underpainting, and then I start painting the lips. The underpainting is like the skeleton of the painting. We're just laying down basic shapes and values so that we have kind of a map to go off of when we're ready to apply color. For this painting, we have very soft light, which is coming from the right side, and soft shadows, which will be on the left. For the base color that I'm going to use to fill in the lips, I'm mixing alizarin crimson with titanium white and cadmium red light. Then with that same color on my brush, I started mixing titanium white and a bit of alizarin crimson to create the color of the lips on the side with more light. With a clean brush, I mixed alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, burnt umber, cadmium red light, and a touch of titanium white. I kept the same color I just mixed on my brush and picked up some burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and titanium white. Leaving that color again on my brush, I add titanium white, yellow ochre, then start a new color with that yellow ochre. Then with that same brush that had that color on it, again, I take a bunch of titanium white and a little bit of cadmium lemon, and this will be for the part of the skin where there is more light reflecting off of it. These colors are just basic estimates to get some color down, and they will be built upon and changed in future layers, but this is just so we get an idea of how the piece is going to look. So next I start building up the left side where there is shadow. This is just where I decided to start. It's, a personal preference for this particular painting. Starting with the yellow ochre shade I mixed at the top, adding a little bit of the highlight skin into it. And then you will see me gradually mix this palette together more as I build on the tones. I'm able to see what colors need to be altered. Since again, they were just estimates, they're not really meant to be used exactly as they are. I am going to be changing them up. I even bring in some of the lighter lip color I created for some of the transitions in the skin between light and shadow, like on the chin and above the lips. Then I mixed burnt umber, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and cadmium red for the warm shadow under the bottom lip, the left corner of the mouth, and the shadows dip above the lips. Then I take the lightest color and place it on the right side where the light is reflected off the skin, simultaneously blending it gently to the other shadows I've already laid down, which is easy to do since the paint is still wet. The right corner of the lips has a warmer shadow, so I'm using that pink color I created, mixing it with a bit of cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and cadmium lemon. Then, with that same brush, I mix cadmium lemon with yellow ochre and titanium white, and this is the transitional blending color from shadow to light. Now that the basic skin tone foundation is laid down, I'm going to fill in the lips. The mid-tone and base color for the lips is that reddish one we created earlier. And the shadow parts of the lips on the left and above and below the line where the lips meet will be that color, with a little bit of titanium white, and I added a bit more cadmium red light as well. The lighter side of the lips to the right will have some of that lighter pink color. Fast forward about 12 hours, the painting is dry to the touch, and now it's time to add another layer. The lighting is a bit different in this video. You can actually see much more clearly the actual colors of the piece. So I scraped the old palette with a glass scraper to make room for new colors, and then start mixing the new colors. I'm going to warm up the shadows and also lighten them up a little and detail the mouth. So the first color I'm mixing is with alizarin crimson, cadmium red light, titanium white, and fading that same color on my palette with more titanium white to create more of a lighter color for the side of the lips with more light reflecting off of them. Next, I started mixing titanium white with cadmium lemon, yellow ochre, cadmium red light, burnt sienna, and using that color to warm up and lighten the shadows. Then, to that color I added titanium white, yellow ochre, and cadmium lemon for a lighter skin tone to paint the lining above the lips and the surrounding lighter shadows, while also blending it with the slightly darker shadows. I hope I'm making sense here. Then I mixed burnt sienna with cadmium red and alizarin crimson, which is a much darker shadow, to go directly under the lips. And then using that lighter peachy color on my palette to soften the transitions between light and shadows. Next, I started to mix Payne's Gray, Burnt Umber, and Alizarin Crimson for the very dark but warm shadow for the left corner of the mouth. So I take that dark shadow color, and then I begin to create the shadow line where the lips close. Then I take that dark shadow color and mixed Alizarin Crimson with Burnt Sienna and Cadmium Red, and that's the color I'm just bringing that shadow further out into the mouth, like to the rest of the lips. The closer it gets to the light, the lighter and warmer it will be. I'm also adding a bit more cadmium red to the shadows on the lips, right below and above the line, and at the very bottom part of the bottom lip. Using that same tone, I started adding texture to them, drawing faint lines very gradually, then going back to the lighter pink color and adding more to that, adding some highlights on the lips. And finally, I used titanium white with a tiny bit of cadmium lemon, and I used that to paint the highlight of the lining above the lip where the light reflects, and it gave it so much more life. And that's just the basic outline for you of how I created this painting. Again, there's a 30-minute, more in-depth version of this process and several other paintings available at my website, lenadanya.com. If you go there and click on blog and bonus videos, it'll take you to where you can sign up. And I have original paintings and fine art prints available at lenadanyastore.com. I hope these tutorials are helpful to you for anyone who's new to oil painting, and if you're already experienced with oil painting, I hope they're still enjoyable. Thank you so much for your support and feedback. Feel free to tell me your tutorial suggestions in the comments below, and I just might paint them. I hope you have a beautiful day